Should games get DLC or should they just make new games?
Yeah,
I
so
think
go on.
there's multiple answers to this question. I think that there's nothing wrong with having more content added to, your favourite game that you're playing. But so are you potentially arguing that instead of making DLC, they should just start on a new game?
Iconic.
Thanks, Iconic!
Awesome. What I'm saying is that there's some games. I think PC has adopted this better than others. I mean, World of Warcraft's gone on forever, hasn't it? It's not had a new game forever. It's just been doing DLC back to back. And there's some games like your FIFAs, like your Formula Ones, your sports type games where they release a new game every year. But technically, all they could have done is just did a patch or a DLC patch to sort of update it.
Yeah.
And I know people are going to go, well, that's going to cost them money. But when you take that model and you apply it to other things, such as fighting games, like Smash, Street Fighter, that kind of thing, do you think games should be constantly updated and supported to get better and better, rather than do what they did with Street Fighter 5? In my opinion, when it first came out, which is they released it, it looked a little bit better, but it wasn't enough content, so everyone was really disappointed of what that was delivered, and then went back to the previous one because they had more stuff, where they wouldn't have that problem as a developer if they kept adding to that game.
I think, we're obviously talking broad strokes because obviously some games are ongoing games. Things like, Destiny and sports titles for sure don't necessarily need a brand new game every year unless they're introducing a new game engine that significantly changes it. But things where it's just like seasons changing, adding more levels and things like that to an already popular game, I have no problem with a game being constantly supported through its lifespan. And you see that with all the live service games. I don't think that you need to always have that brand new game, particularly when it comes to sports titles. But then at the same time, you want to have a game that takes advantage of the hardware it's running on. So by doing DLC, you are potentially limiting what you could create if you put your resources into actually developing new game engines and things like that instead.
Yeah, agreed. And there will be examples of that. And I think we can take this subject and move on to all these different types of games, can we? And it'll be a different case each time. But if you look at things like Overwatch, where they've almost decided that they've made a mistake in some ways, because if they release Overwatch 2, they're splitting up their fan base, because you can't play Overwatch 2 unless you get it, but you've already got this well-established Overwatch 1 crowd, and that will be the same with FIFA and everything else that you do. You're kind of splitting up your audience every time you release a new game. Whereas we play a lot of Dead by Daylight at the moment, which is really good and we're really enjoying it. It would be quite painful if they took the Dead by Daylight crowd, which is so popular on Twitch and everyone's playing it, and then released a second one and split that fan base up. Whereas if they kept Dead by Daylight going for a very long time, or if not indefinitely, that fan base would always be readily available. It'd only take a new character to get people to come back to it again. And I just saw in what Reinhardt said in the Reinhardt City said in the chat, things like Streets of Rage 4, they've added loads of DLC. That would be kind of enough. You might be right. I don't, but until they bring out Streets of Rage 5, I'm not too sure what else they could do with that game. But it's like I think what I'm saying is that I know Street Fighter 6 is coming. I've just given Street Fighter 5 a go. I've kind of got used to it, and now I have to start back from square one. And there's also that fan base that's not there. Overwatch is the same. Dead by Daylight is the same. Does every game need a sequel? Is the biggest question. I mean, Destiny. Jack, you might have some thoughts on Destiny.
I do, yeah. I think, speaking of Destiny, there was actually, before Bungie left Activision, so the newest DLC, the big one that came out last year, was it November time, was originally going to be Destiny 3, and all the subsequent stuff that's now coming out was Activision's plan for Destiny 3. But when Bungie left Activision, they were like, right, we're scrapping 3, just put it as DLC in Destiny 2. So see, they made Destiny 1, then Activision were like, right, we need a sequel, make this sequel. And it was like, I watched recently a footage of some old gameplay in like 2017. Destiny 2 as a game has essentially is now Destiny 2.5 in terms of what it was when it was released. So yeah, I think the way Bungie have gone with like their live service model now and the way they're delivering their seasonal models and stuff has definitely, I think, improved. And I think it also depends on the game. Like looking at that question, I think in terms of Destiny, I think because I've played both live service games and like DLC like heavy games, and then also titles in a series like the Arkham games. You know, they could have Arkham City could have easily been an Arkham Asylum DLC, but instead they made it a new game, upgraded it, stuff like that. Same with Arkham Knight, and Origins was like sort of it was good, but it used a lot of the same assets from City. I think it also depends on the publisher and developer relationship, because I think some publishers, like for example, FIFA, like you said earlier, it doesn't need to be a new game every year, but it is because EA like the fact that they can just release a title. They could easily input a patch and DLC into FIFA because the game's such a minute change each year.
Well, here's a
paying...
question.
I've got a question as well.
Go on, Jack.
Yes.
John.
So my question is, small DLC, big DLC that changes the game, like you said with Destiny 2 and like 2.5, as you say, Jack. What's more exciting to you as a gamer, though? Is it significant DLC coming out for a game you've already got, or a brand new version of that game? Whether it's marketed as such or not is kind of irrelevant, but a brand new Destiny would probably have you more excited. If someone said to you, Destiny 3 is coming out in 6 months' time, you'd be well excited about that, and probably more excited than you would be about, oh, here's a new Destiny 2 DLC. It's a marketing thing, isn't it? You save your big marketing pushes for actual new releases.
I agree. Like it's like when Destiny 2 got announced, I was hyped. I was in Paris for a college trip and I was so excited. The trailer looked really cool. I was hyped. And then but every subsequent big DLC has still got me excited for the game. Like the newest one was really cool when they showed it off, and they've announced 2 new DLCs. Like they announced it when they announced this previous one. So they've got like 2 years worth of DLCs coming out already announced. And that's been delayed. This next DLC has been delayed to next year due to COVID and everything. So like, I'm excited to see what they're doing with it, because I think because I've played that game for like 7 years now, like that series, it's become I sort of am familiar with. Here's some pretty priced DLC that'll last you a year because it's the big DLC. Then
I suppose you're right, Jack, in that some DLC can be the same price as a new game, can't it? In some cases.
Yeah,
sometimes it is.
It's like, for example, a lot of, so as I said like a couple of years ago on an OLL show back when we were at the cafe, at that time I spent like £500 on the series as a whole, and now it's I think probably 600 now, because obviously there's been like 2 DLCs since then, and like because I always
as a result that has sort of stopped you from experiencing other games though, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, no, definitely, because I pay for this series that I've played for so long and will constantly play. I pay 70 quid for the DLC and a year's worth of content. I tried to because you can buy each season, which is like 3 months, for a tenner, or you can buy the DLC and the subsequent 3 seasons for 70, which is what I tend to do because I'm saving myself some money. So
they've got you on a hook, John.
You're there.
Yeah.
You're in for good forever.
Going off the back of what? Sorry, I was just going to go off the back of what you've said there, John. Then, would you, if you would, because you enjoy your F1 games?
Apparently so, yeah.
Apparently so. I heard. I don't know where I heard that from.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah, I've seen something about a shelf.
Get on with it.
Anyway,
something about
if they did release Formula One the game and never did any more sequel releases, and literally every year they just updated the roster, would you eventually stop playing that game or get fed up with it? Or is it the hype of the next game coming that makes you want to say, yes, I'm going to play F1?
If they were to say, we've got 2021 version of the game coming out this year, and in 2022 there's not going to be a new game, there's just going to be DLC, as a long time fan of it, I would be fine with that. I think.
So you wouldn't say, for example, you bought the game 6 months ago.
Yes.
A new game is going to come out now.
Yes.
But they've just patched F1 to have all the new teams and the new changes and the extra tracks and stuff like that. Do you feel that you would go back to F1, which is a game you've already played and but to look at the new content, or would you say, actually, I've already done that, I'm going to experience something new that's coming out? And then take that same question again, but say the new F1 game's coming out. Would you prioritise that new F1 game over anything else if it was a physical new release you could hold in your hand?
I think it would depend on different elements of the game, because if it's a new product that's being released rather than DLC for something existing, if that new product has other features rather than just updates, but if it's something where it edits the game engine and the game plays better, then I would inevitably be way more excited about that than it being a DLC upgrade. But then you look at things like, say, what EA do with FIFA on the Switch. It literally says on the box of FIFA 21 on the Switch, this is FIFA 19 with DLC for FIFA 20 and FIFA 21. They haven't changed the Switch version since 2019. That is literally just a skins upgrade. At
full price, which is daylight robbery.
Yeah, but when it comes to F1, I'm just like any other hypocritical gamer. I'm at the mercy of whatever the publishers decide to do with their product, and as a fan, I will buy whichever method they ask of me to get the new content that they've created. So I don't have a choice whether they do it as DLC, whether it's done as a new disc or whatever. If I want to play that type of game, I have to, unfortunately, suck it up and pay through whatever method they want, I guess.
Yeah. I think in my world, the answer to this question is one of those idealistic ones. I would love very much for game developers to be able to create a game when a console first comes out and then end that game's life cycle when that console's finished and dead. And then when a new console comes out, they can then bring out the sequel.
Do it in generations, yes. Oh, I like that idea.
Yeah, but I mean, having everything fall into place so that is possible, you know. So your Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8 and all that kind of stuff happened as soon as PlayStation 5 first launched, and then making sure when that console's over, you've got the next game ready is you know, obviously that whatever, Bill.
It's kind of how Nintendo do it, isn't it? New console comes out, they do all of their franchises in the first year and a half or so, and then you've got that for that generation. That's probably the closest example to that.
When I look at games like Mortal Kombat, when Mortal Kombat 9 came out, we all were like, Mortal Kombat's good again. Then Mortal Kombat 10 and 11 were 2 years apart, and you immediately split the audience up, where there was some people I used to play Mortal Kombat 10 with who preferred that game, did not switch over to 11. So I ended up having both copies, both installed, and you know, having enough space on your hard drive is another conversation altogether to have all these games in case one of your mates wants to play your version. But if it was just that Mortal Kombat for PlayStation 5 and that was the Mortal Kombat you played, it would be a lot easier. You wouldn't separate your audience, and then you'd bring that season to an end when the next game comes in. Plus, I feel if you had that, and then backwards compatibility was a factor in the next console, that would make it even more important that backwards compatibility is a feature, because you've kept all your audience together with one game. You're getting a new console, that game can still work, and then if you all decide to get the next game when the new console happens, you haven't lost anything, it hasn't all gone. Because there's too many consoles and too many games that I've missed and left behind, and I can't. And my one friend wants to play Left 4 Dead on Xbox 360, and it's the only one he's got. And it's like, for God's sake, there's so many more games we could be playing now. But yeah, that's what I mean by that.
A question from Fanata. Fanata says, your favourite game is now a collecting holy grail and is on an unemulatable console. Basically, your favourite game is now literally like there's one copy of it left in the world. How much would you pay for it?
God,
I would never pay more than £200 for a game, depending on length and content.
So say your favourite game is Smash Bros. Ultimate, and there was only one copy in the entire world, and you wanted it. You wouldn't pay more than £200 for it.
Well, no, because if it was only one copy in the entire world, I couldn't play it with anyone else anyway. So,
for the purposes of the question, all right, Jack, your favourite game, Transformers. How much would you pay for it if there was only one copy left in the world, and that was the only way to play it? How much would you be prepared to pay for it?
Oh, like 300. I wouldn't pay a lot, but
wow,
like 300 would be max because like I love that game, but like I don't know, because I get really stingy with like buying games. I don't often buy them full price anymore. I try to go for deals. So like, yeah, I mean, 70 quid is a lot for me. Like for these new ones, so like £300, you know.
The way you've worded that though, John, is really tricky because
I was trying to simplify Fanata's ridiculously long question in the Discord. To be fair.
Well, if it's an RPG, which is going to take 150, 200 hours to complete, and that's your favourite game, that's why those games cost so much to repurpose, because they're actually worth the investment that you put in. But if your favourite game is, I don't know, Alex Kidd, and you can complete it in less than 45 minutes, and they're asking for £2,000 for it, that's a slightly different kettle of fish, isn't it?
Now, see, Final Fantasy VII being my favourite game, if there was no other way to get hold of it than to, you know, pay such and such money to have it, I would probably pay over £1,000 for Final Fantasy VII.
Wow.
If I had the £1,000 spare, obviously, but I would quite happily pay £1,000 for my favourite game. That's how much it means to me. If there was no other way to have it, and I really wanted to have it.
Like, the game means a lot to me, but it's just like, it's a lot of money. I mean, it's a shame. That's such a good question because I would happily pay more, but like, as what Bill said, is
our
right.
personal
like,
bank balances are definitely a factor here, aren't they?
Yeah, there's that. But like I said, if a game is going to give you 200 to 500 hours worth of value, that's going to be different than. Thanks for following.
I like the Sonic reference in the name here. Hello, Mobius Co. Nice to see you. Hello and welcome. But you built. I had a really good point to make then. Crazy mental blank.
I was just saying, if the game's 200 to 500 hours, that's going to be different to something that's smaller. Has that jogged your memory?
Yeah, the length of the game is immaterial. It's how much value you place on it to own it, I guess. But then you look at things like, what's the most expensive game? Was it an original, proper, sealed copy of Super Mario Bros? Vargas was just reminding me in the chat. I think that went for like $1 million or something.
It's
people are willing, you know, people out there who've got crazy money and are super rich, the games do go for that crazy amount of money.
Yeah, but I think there's a certain era, I think around about the PlayStation 1 Sega Saturn era, where I feel games suddenly became a lot bigger in the RPG genre. And as you start going up and I start looking at Xenoblade, and for me, Zelda Twilight Princess is probably the one that is going to be up there for me. Mm-hmm. Those games I can put a lot of time into and replay over and over again. Whereas Sparkstar on the Super Nintendo is probably my favourite Super Nintendo game, and I can blast through the whole game on the hardest skill level in less than an hour. I wouldn't pay more than £200 for that.
Okay.
But if you wanted an RPG like Final Fantasy VII, like you were talking about, having more than £200, considering how many hours you would get out of that every PlayStation, is a little bit more reasonable.
I probably wouldn't even play it. I'd just stick it on the wall or something. So, Bill, your answer is
Skyrim poster.
So I'd spend £1,000. You'd spend 200, and Jack would spend 300 for his favourite game.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go. Let us know your thoughts in the chat. Right, let's move on to our last question before I do our quiz. And the question comes from the Todonator, and the Todonator says, "Who do you think out of Sony and Microsoft are exercising the most consumer-friendly practices with their new consoles?"
Microsoft.
Good answer. Bill?
I think Microsoft.
I don't think this answer. I can't answer this question right now because I haven't had the Xbox long enough.
Give it a week.
Yeah, I've only literally only a couple of days, and I've played it for like an hour. But on the surface of what I'm looking at, I think it's less about what they're doing and more about how bloody easy they've made it. Now, all of the benefits you get from PlayStation 5 are very impressive if you write them down in a list and understand them with graphs and charts. But when you actually try to action anything they give you, it's too bloody complicated to even care. Whereas when you go to Xbox and you can literally log on with an app, press a button, and suddenly you've got, oh, look at all these games you can just download with a few button clicks. That immediately speaks volumes to me.
Save files are a huge advantage, I think, with the Xbox. I mean, just to give an example, sometimes I might log into my Xbox profile on a console at work. Just, have a little play while it's quiet or whatever. And I don't need to do anything at all. I don't have to upload save files to the cloud, re-download them. I don't have to convert anything from being a Series X version to a standard Xbox version. It's just constantly always there, available there and then. I can play a bit of work, don't have to press any buttons. I just close the game, don't have to upload anything or save anything, and I go home and I can carry on where I left off. Whereas, oh my god, anyone who's played the Final Fantasy VII Remake on PS5 and has tried to move over their PS4 file to it, it's horrific. It is horrific. And the fact even now, every new game that comes out that's multi-platform, there's a PS4 version and a PS5 version, separate physical versions, whereas the Xbox One, it's just one game and it works on everything.
Yeah, not only that, is that when you install your PlayStation 4 version, you have to install that first, then install the PlayStation 5 version, and then when the downloads happen, the game goes, oh, you've got both versions, download both. Yes. And it's like, you think, it doesn't tell you necessarily, without you actually looking at it, what version you got. It's not smart enough to say, well, you're only going to play the PlayStation 5 version, aren't you?
I mean, I imagine that is something that they will iron out, and it will become less of an issue, obviously, once the previous generation dies off.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I think the usability of the console is generally better with the Xbox because it's using its existing user interface as well, which has been refined now over a generation. Whereas the PS5 on-screen menu, it's all right, but I feel it's a little clumsy here and there. Jack, sorry, buddy, give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I think I agree with all your points, to be honest. As much as I love my PS5, I think it's a lovely console and I use it quite a lot, and I was always PlayStation 4, Xbox. I do. I play it all the time. I'm always on it. I love the Sony exclusives, but like Microsoft's ease of use is amazing. Like, I will admit, like, I had the Xbox One before I got the PlayStation 4, and the Xbox like menu so easy to use. It's simple, it's the tiles are quite easy to see, and Game Pass is just brilliant. And I do like the fact that it isn't a separate. To be honest, all your points that you guys have said, I agree with. Really, like
my biggest.
As much as I love the PS5, I do think Xbox are doing it better in terms of.
I think that Xbox are doing it in a way that makes their offer look more obvious and easy to understand, and I think that goes a long way for customer satisfaction at the end of the day. My experience with Xbox at the moment compared to PlayStation 5 is this. I have had a big headache trying to transfer everything from PS4 to PS5 and update and everything else.
You haven't had to learn anything new.
Right.
That's just what all us old people like.
Well, to a certain degree, but then I've also installed...
Copying is a pain.
Sorry, Jack?
On PlayStation, you have to copy the entire bloody game after an update.
Yeah,
like, it updates it.
Of course.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I installed Mass Effect, the collection, right, which took up over 100 gigabytes plus a patch, which I don't know how big quite. So my hard drive is now filled on the PlayStation 5 in less than a couple of months. That immediately says, I don't care what offers you got for me, because I can't install them. I can't download anything. Your console is already out of space. Whereas with the Xbox, it's like, you want to download that one? Fine. You got no space? Get rid of it. Download it again afterwards. That, for me, that where it comes to that question, speaks more volumes than any kind of special offer, and you don't have to pay for this twice, or you don't have to have this again. that it just makes more sense in this modern world.
Talking about usability as well, the PlayStation 5, and Jack will attest this, you need to have a specific PlayStation 5 camera if you want to do streaming. You can't use old controllers with the PS5. You can only use the PS5 controllers if you want the PS5 rumble features and everything. Whereas with the Xbox, you can chuck any Xbox controller in it, or Xbox One onwards controller in it. You can use any USB camera with it. You can use generally any USB hard drive. Those kind of things make a difference for sure.
You can use PlayStation 4 controllers on a PlayStation 5. That you can do stuff like that, but it's so the fact that I have to tell people that, and it's not obvious when Xbox have made it obvious, already speaks that they're on point with their message, aren't they?
I don't want to sound like I'm just bashing PlayStation, but sorry, Jack.
No, I was just saying, I think Microsoft have got it down for consumer. Like last generation, they were sort of a bit lackluster consumering stuff. I remember when Sony were like, how to share a game with a friend.
That was great, to be fair. I liked that.
It's amazing how they play tennis with one another, isn't it? They kind of reversed it now.
Yeah.
With I mean, I'm not a fan. Not bashing the PlayStation 5 like you said, but it is a bit of a slap in the face that I have to buy a hard drive now to actually fit everything on there, whereas Xbox is allowing me to, upload, download, and everything else so much easier without all these memory issues. So.
I'll be honest. The hard drive thing I've done for years, like, because I had the original 500 gigabyte Xbox One, so I bought an external hard drive anyway. So I just did it as like a robotic thing for like my PS4. So I've still got my external hard drive for my PS4. It's like a 2 terabyte hard drive, so I've got loads of space. So I'm not too bothered on that count because I have so much space for games that it doesn't bother me hard drive wise. But I can also see how, like, if you haven't got an external hard drive for like money or whatever, because you just bought this massive expensive console, the fact that the PlayStation's like, because I go on the storage and it's just like I have like 6 games on my PS5 storage. That's nearly gone. I have like 40 plus on my external hard drive, and I've still got loads of space.
Well, I suppose that is the problem when you're going from PS4 and a full library to PS5. When I was going from an Xbox One, kind of maybe 4 or 5 games, going to an Xbox Series S.
I have to say that was something that I was very upset about actually, because I had a PS4 Pro, which had a terabyte hard drive, and when I bought my PlayStation 5 for £450, I wanted to do the transfer thing, so it moves everything over when you set it up. PS5. It's only got like 700 gig, so I couldn't transfer everything I had on my PS4 to my PS5. So what kind of new console is it where I can't have all my old stuff on my new stuff?
Yeah, which would be fine, isn't it? It would be fine if that wasn't a feature. They've actually advertised that you can do this, but no one's gone, well, I've got a terabyte going through 500 meg. How's this going to work?
Yes.
No, it doesn't matter. You don't want all of it, surely. Yeah, you said I could.
I want to play my old games. You've made it PS4 compatible. Why would I not want to keep my PS4 games? But to be fair, as much as I don't want it to sound, it is. There's no hiding it. We are bashing the PS5 a little bit today. Sorry about that. PS5 is still good. And I think once we start to see those exclusive Sony studio games coming out, the new God of War, a new Naughty Dog game, then I'm sure that it's all going to swing back in Sony's favour once again. I think it's just the whole usability of things. It's just a little bit muddled at the moment until it all settles down in this. We're still only 6 months in, aren't we?
Yeah, in closing, it looks as if Sony are doing the classic reactionary response to seeing what everyone else is doing and saying, our console can do that and it can do this. And because they're Frankenstein monstering their console, it doesn't look like they've got a clear message. So going back to Toddinator's question about who's more, exercising more consumer friendliness, it's not that they're not trying, it's that they're almost throwing everything at the wall and you can't get past the noise because there's things in your way and hurdles to jump over. Whereas Xbox clearly dialed back on their Xbox One, knowing that they'd lost this time, and gone out with a clear business strategy to say, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to stick to it. And that's our message. We're not going to backpedal. And you can see the difference that it's made. as soon as you got both consoles side by
Also,
side.
no Connect.
Yeah, exactly. They
Connect with the console.
No
there's
rubbish
Connect.
gimmicks.
No rubbish gimmicks. Literally, we are going to be the gaming Netflix, is the message I've got from the Xbox. If you said, what is PlayStation 5's message to me?
Big exclusive games, but not yet, and it's going to be expensive.
Yeah. I got no idea what their one message is to me as a consumer.
Their message is, hang on, Naughty Dog are working on something. Right. Thanks, guys.